Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the Anti-Oppression and Equity Breakout Room session. And this is a conversation that we're having tonight, and I want to hear from you more than you hear from me. And really, I want to just talk about how you've encompassed anti-oppression in working with your councils and your schools and communities. So if we can have a conversation, maybe share some things we've done.
Our council held an equity night for parents and council members.
Okay.
And also we established a Black Student Success Committee, and that's holding a presentation as well.
Excellent, thank you. And was it the council that planned that, or was that in collaboration with students and staff?
The Black Student Success Committee, or
Yes.
that was actually something that I've initiated, and I'm the vice chair for the school for council. So I've started that, and we're hoping to sort of put it under the school eventually. We've also started a social justice club for students, and that's under the school.
Excellent, great work, thank you. Anybody else like to share? Don't talk at once, please. Anybody do programs with the anti-oppression lens and they're successful, or use any of their school council money to engage families at all?
Yeah, in our school, actually, we used the program grant money towards the end of May. We actually had a workshop. A lot of work went in behind the scenes by right from the moment shortlisting the speaker, and finally we were able to get a session, a 2-hour session done with the parents via Zoom, and it was around anti-racism. So the topic was so do you want to talk about race? And we got in one of the TDSB approved speakers, and we had a session, and it was quite informative, very well received. And it was not just the session itself, but also learnings and takeaways, how do we raise anti-racist children, and all of that. And along with that, as a follow-up, what we do plan to carry on from or carry forward into this school year is a book club, start as the next step from that session, wherein the initial discussions, with the speaker that we've had, is that we will actually be discussing, sharing a book basically virtually with the interested parents, and then coming together and discussing various themes around anti-racism in that book, and learning from that.
Thank you, Shamir, for sharing. I love that idea because, it's building literacy skills, it's building parents and caregivers and children relationships, and it's also having conversations. And I like that you're continuing to do next steps. Sometimes we get stuck in just doing the one-off for parents or for our schools, and sometimes there's not a lot of impact. And I challenge us to start thinking about what is really the goal we want to accomplish and the objective of what we do and the impact of what we do. And I think it's important that we start wanting to go deeper and do more. And sometimes that means more than one session. That might mean going in deeper in something that we talked about. That might mean there's some feelings that are coming up. So we might need to have another session and maybe do another way. Anybody else like to share? So I'm not going to put any of my parents on the spot, but I'm going to share some things that, some great initiatives that some of my councils did last year with their programs. Some used their school council money. But sometimes when you're dealing with racism and systemic racism in the school and anti-oppression and equity and anti-Indigenous, and all these antis, there's a lot of trauma behind it. There's a lot of mistrust. and sometimes is a lack of feeling valued and having a voice. So one of my schools did an art project called Healing Through Art. And we actually did an art night with parents and students. We gave out free art kits to families that wanted to participate. And we had a facilitator that actually took us through some African teachings and drawings. And we emulated her doing the art, and it was actually really relaxing. It was calming. We had some great conversations. And I thought that was a great way to start having conversations about healing when you deal with different systemic institutional racism. Anybody else want to share?
Hi, Colleen. It's one of your colleagues.
Hello, Ian.
How's it
Hi.
going? Hi. I just thought I'd share an interesting project that some George Webster parents put together last year, which were just called affinity spaces. And affinity spaces are for groups of parents to get together to speak on topics that are related to parts of their identity. So for instance, if it was an LGBTQ focused affinity space, it would be for queer parents to get together and talk about stuff, or you could do it for different groups. And it just allows people to speak more freely. And so we would do some workshops learning about anti-racism, and then there would be an affinity space organized in between workshops to allow people to debrief and speak openly about how they felt, how things were going. And then that was reported back to the school by people that they trusted, by some of the parents. So, and that was, it went really well.
Great. I love that. You're really empowering people to have a voice and really be inclusive. And I think that's important. You know, anti-oppression is, sometimes we forget about our LGBTQ, non-binary students and families. We forget about ableism. We forget about spec ed. And these are all things we need to look at when we're thinking about equity, inclusion, and anti-oppression. Any other stories? So let's talk some strategies. Because TDSB is a huge system. So how can we ingrain equity and anti-oppression in a system that is so big, where we want impact and we want positive environments for our children? And a big way of doing that is connecting with your school improvement plan. So some of you may be familiar with this. Every school has a school improvement plan under 3 areas: achievement, equity, and well-being. And a part of the school's role is advising the council and talking to parents on what the goals are and input of those goals, rather it be changing them, rather it be what you feel should be included, or if you're okay with it because you feel it does target all the areas under achievement, well-being, and equity, because they're all interrelated. Having a voice and looking at what programs are brought in the school. And when you work with the school on the school improvement plan, there is a form of accountability, because that is in writing. School improvement plan has to be sent to the superintendent of that school. The principal has to sign off on that, the staff team, and everyone needs to be working together in that school community for those goals for those students in school. And sometimes those goals also include, staff PD and professional development. Sometimes it includes building community and parent engagement and ways you can do that. So it's important as a council and as parents, that caregivers, you have a voice, and that you ask your school, what is your school improvement plan? And can the council get a copy, or can you share with us what those improvement plans are? And do we have an area where we can give input into those goals? And it should be inclusive and open. Some schools also have subcommittees like Safe School and different things. I know pre-COVID, they had a lot more subcommittees and they met. Some schools still have subcommittees, like equity subcommittees and things like that, where virtually they do meet and connect with and talk about how we can continue to build these things in our school. If it's sometimes safe and caring subcommittee, sometimes looking at traffic issues, safety issues with pickup or drop-offs, with cars, with parking, and subcommittees deal with that. So really looking at ways your school community can connect and really advocate and have a voice in your school, rather it be through school improvement plan, rather be applying for parent reaching out grants with the board now and getting partnerships in, getting information in, rather it's talking to your school and doing a book club and getting resources in that are culturally relevant in the classroom and in the library. And one thing is to have the resources there, which all our schools have. The second thing is, and when I talk about going deeper and doing more, is actually utilizing those books and resources. Because a lot of times teachers aren't using those books or resources. So parents can then advocate on using those books and resources. Or maybe parents know a storyteller that could come in and do something for the primary grades or for the school. So I think it's really building that communal feeling of inclusiveness. That's important. Is there any questions of what I talked about? I'm just going to check the chat. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole has put in a document on different committees. Student voice is very important. I encourage councils and parents to ensure there's opportunity, not only for student voice, but leadership. Students should be leading their education. It shouldn't be a top-down approach. It should be a shared leadership approach. So students should be bringing things in the class. Parents should be able to bring some learning into the class. There should be an open learning that, you know, educators can learn from their students and lived experiences as we learn from them. And I think that's a mindset. I think that's school culture and climate, and that's something that, you know, we can continue to work on. But I think it's important that our students have a voice and lead their educational journey.
I had a question.
Okay.
My name is Rahima.
Hi,
And
Rahima.
I'm a co-chair for Walter Perry Public School, Junior Public School. And I just wanted to know, how can we as parent council get students involved? Because our school does not involve so many children. We just, we don't even get that many parents out to support parent council.
Mhm. And I would say go back to the school's improvement plan. And part of that should have students' voice in there and leadership. And if it doesn't, how is it built in those 3 goals? Remember, where it comes to wellness and well-being, equity and achievement, where's the student voice in these 3 goals? Where is the leadership in these 3 goals? I don't see it. And that's when you can start having a dialogue on, well, maybe well-being, the students can organize a wellness activity or whatever it may be that they want to do outdoors or virtually or whatever, and work with the students, maybe even developing a student council. Sometimes middle schools or even up to grade 6, they have a student council that has student leaders in that group who are doing initiatives that are student-led, that are linked to the goals. Again, student improvement plans and the goals of the school is what holds the school accountable. There should be something for parents and community, something for students, something for the staff. Everybody should be building on bringing the school together to better educate students for achievement, equity, and well-being. So looking at that through the lens of, is our parent community in these goals reflective? Is our student lived experiences, voices reflective? And our educators getting support and the professional development they need to continue to educate our children and be inclusive and
I
culturally relevant.
100%, I do 100% agree with you.
Mhm.
And I think going forward, with the COVID, it kind of stopped for us
Yes.
in our schools. So
Yes.
going forward, I think that's a great idea to have the students' voice more. Plus, it's the language barrier. So if kids can speak up and voice their knowledge in how they want the school to run, I think their parents would get involved and to understand that concept, I think.
I totally agree. I totally
Thank you so
agree.
much.
Thank you for that, Rahima. Is there any other questions or comments on what we talked about? So I think Nicole has a comment in the chat. School council can use their free Zoom account to run discussions, conversation sessions on all these great topics. And I think that's great. And that's why you have a Zoom account. You can do that. And I know some of my schools talked about doing that. I'm just mindful that you have the right people having these right conversations and facilitating these conversations. Because sometimes, feelings come up, sometimes sensitive conversations happen, and you want it to be a safe space as much as possible to have brave conversations and courageous conversations where everyone feels they have a voice if they choose. But definitely councils can have conversation series if they want. If you're model schools, you have a community support worker. If you visit our hub, I'm going to put in a plug at TDSB hub.ca. You will find who your community support worker is based off of your school. And a lot of information and resources is on that hub on even Black focus, Indigenous, community resources, even a school council library with different access to different things for school councils that they could discuss, flyers for different events. So there's a lot of resources. So at your own will, please take a look. Sierra, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I was just wondering, my son's school is a model school, and with model schools, do we also not have a City of Toronto Public Health person assigned to our school, like a nurse or something?
You sound very low. I think your question was Toronto Public Health nurses at the schools.
Yes. Do
Okay.
model schools have those, and could we have online discussion, like an online talk about the importance of masks being worn properly and things like that? There seems to be some pushback from some parents in my son's school. I just feel that doesn't make the school a safe environment for all the kids.
And thank you for that question. In the chat, Ian put in the database for Toronto Public Health nurses and school. So schools do have a public health nurse assigned. Due to COVID, a lot of them were pulled to do COVID support, and they were not supporting schools, but there is a nurse that I did do some workshops, attached a nurse to my council meeting that did updates about COVID and what was happening. During the time with your council meetings, also the principal should be updating on safety procedures and protocol that's in place. And you can also, as a council, invite guest speakers to your council. So you can invite Toronto Public Health. The principal does have a contact that they could invite and have them come out to do an update or do a Q&A with parents.
Not enough of the parents in my school community are interested in participating, unfortunately. But I was wondering if there's a way of setting up various classroom sessions, even if it's virtually, even if the public health nurse is on a computer screen, to talk to the actual kids. Because I feel like some of the parents aren't going to change. But I would like a third party who is trained and knowledgeable to teach my son's classmates how to properly wear their masks.
That's a great idea. And I think we should do both, have the message to parents and the students. So they're both
I've
getting the
tried with
message.
some parents and had battles.
Right.
And it goes nowhere because
Yeah.
they just don't feel like teaching their children to care about others.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, my right is to not wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas to me, it's my right is to teach my son to try and protect people. Maybe
Right.
it isn't as big as thing as they say it is, but how does it hurt trying to keep your neighbors safe?
Right. And then all we could do is relay the message, right? That's all we can control and do, and just relay the message of safety and just continue to relaying that message. And if it can't get across from us or, educators, then bring in the experts and let them have a conversation with us and see. And that's all we can do. And just hope that, through the conversations and the experts, that people start following and listening, but also talking to the principal if there's concerns about what needs to be discussed, and having the principal maybe relay some of those messaging to classes or to parents or whoever needs that messaging.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just like to put a note. I do agree with what she's trying to say, because I realize that TDSB schools don't have anything in place like other district boards do. At a lot of model schools, there's no lines. There's not proper social distance in line. They're just randomly standing in line with their masks. Nothing is implemented by saying, you have to stay your social distance. Everybody's just standing as if it's not COVID in a lot of schools in the Toronto district boards, but other districts have marks on the lineup lines, inside the building.
Yeah, and I know there's breakouts in some schools right now, and it's high anxiety for everybody right now. But every school has to have a protocol in place through TDSB procedures and through public health. There's strict rules of even coming into the school and signing in and doing an app check and different things like that, and even where you can go in a school. So they are strict rules. It's hard because a principal can't oversee everything, but it's bringing it to their attention, and just letting the principal know, look, these things have happened, send an email, have a conversation. I'm noticing that this is happening. I'm concerned about it. Can you please look into it? There's also different avenues of communication, trying to talk to the teacher, trying to talk to the principal. You have superintendents, you have trustees. So there's different people in the board who can help support different things that you're trying to move forward in the school, or if you have concerns.
Sorry, Colleen, to interrupt.
Hi.
I think they're wanting us back in the main session. I think there was a little notice.
Yes, I'm sorry, this is great conversation, but we do have to head back. Thank you for everyone for sharing and being here. Thank you. And let's head back to the webinar.